Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and I've got to say, it's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to a fellow Australian, albeit 1 hour behind, because he's living in the state where it's perfect one day and sensational the next in Queensland. Mr. Terry Wilson, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Darren. Pleasure to be here. And yeah, look, they made the decision quite some time ago not to move with daylight saving. They were worried about the extra daylight fading the blinds.
That's right. I got to say though, it's such a frustrating thing because we run business nationally. I mean, internationally you get different date lines and stuff like that and timelines, but even within Australia, geez, it causes some chaos with the calendar.
Look, I had a meeting yesterday with an Australian business. They were across 3 time zones: Perth, New South Wales, and Victoria is the same, and Queensland. And so literally it was more confusing trying to book a meeting in Australia than it was to schedule with our overseas clients. It was crazy.
But the things we have to deal with, hey? Thankfully we are flexible.
First world problems.
That is, absolutely. So, mate, really looking forward to this. You're the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Chatmetrics. You've been running that business a little while now. Love to delve into that, but also the origins. But you're also a podcaster yourself, and you run a podcast called The Chat. And you're just telling me before you press record, because I said to you, I've got about 9 backed up, ready to go, and you've said, I've got 16. So, and there was one you're just telling me you had for 3.5 hours, you had to break up into about 5 different episodes.
It was incredible, actually. A lady called Elsa Mullock, and she wouldn't mind me mentioning her name, and it's the podcast on our website. But it was just one of those free-flowing conversations with such an interesting person that's got such a diverse background, both personally and from a business perspective. And look, I've got a bit of a fascination when it comes to behavioral science and things, psychology. And so once we started to get down that route, I mean, we were talking about we talk about speed to lead, and she mentioned that the CIA trained for speed to lead. So that was whole one rabbit hole that we went down. And she was very had a lot of examples of cases where she'd helped clients through this whole return to office scenario since the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, there's some real challenges there and a lot of considerations that need to be given. And it was just fascinating to talk to her about the way that, organizations had achieved, some organizations have achieved a much higher return than others. But yeah, it was amazing. But 3.5 hours, it was a long haul. It was excellent conversation.
That's Joe Rogan like, mate. Are you waiting for Spotify to knock down the door with $100 million contract?
No. Look, I mean, our podcast, transparently, I'd like to think that we can get to the stage where, our ideal client profile and our audience, our target audience are sales and marketing leaders, and that's who our customer base is. And, the aim, transparently, will be to be able to get our ideal client profile to come on and have conversations and start to build relationships. I'm certainly not looking to be the next Joe Rogan, that's for sure. I don't think I could handle the publicity. I'm too much of an introvert, mate. So.
No, you're doing great work, mate, and it's great to be able to talk to another podcaster, which is fascinating. So we're going to delve into all things conversations, conversions, sales leadership. Just as a bit of background, if you can give us a bit of the history of Terry Wilson and what has led you to starting to run Chatmetrics.
Look, in a nutshell, grew up in the bush, moved to the city, had a couple of jobs in different industries, the meat industry, the building industry, stumbled into the steel industry as an accountant by trade originally. And after a 25-year career in the steel industry, was chatting with a guy at the front of a hairdressing salon one day. We were both waiting for our wives. They both said that they're going to be out in 10 minutes. And we're chatting, and sort of 45 minutes later, we've solved half the problems of the world. But one of the things that we had honed in on, was this. At the time, my role was national sales and marketing manager within that large business I was in, and he was running a digital marketing agency. So we sort of got into this conversation around marketing expenditure and generating leads, and we both were very interested in the waste
Mm.
aspect, where you know websites convert at such a low percentage. There's so many marketing dollars that are spent that you can't really attribute. Are you getting a benefit from it or not? At the time, I was running about a $1.6 million advertising budget within our team. And so it was something that was top of mind. So it was just interesting. The conversation got to that. Next thing you know, our wives walk out laughing with each other. They'd known each other for 3 months. We'd only just met on the park bench that day. My wife was just starting up a skin and laser clinic. And long story short, he ended up building the website for her. She was getting 3 to 5 appointments a week booked through
Mm.
her website. Um, all of a sudden, this chat widget thing appeared on the website one day, and those appointments went from 3 to 5 a week to 3 to 5 a day, which was fantastic. But back then I thought the thing had been hacked. I'm on there and say, like, who is this? What are you doing? How do you get on this website? And no, we're just your customer service people, going to help you get a lot more appointments. Uh, 6 months later, I got a panic phone call from my wife saying, hey, the appointments have dried up. That chat thing's gone. So I rang the web guy, and said, what's going on? And he said, no, I just need to make a few tweaks. It'll be a couple of days and it'll be back on again. When he turned it back on, immediately the appointments went back to 5 or 6 a day.
Wow.
And that was a real aha moment for me. And we'd got to know each other a little bit over those. That was about a sort of a 12-month period, and it took us another 2 years to, get to a point where we knew and trusted and liked each other enough to say, look, they think there's a business in this, and sort of that was the beginnings of Chat Metrics. On the August back in 2015, we kicked off. We're bootstrapped.
Mm.
He's the technical back end. I'm the commercial front end. I just got on the call and started making calls and cold calling and cold emailing, and grew the business from there, really. But the really fascinating thing for me was that the impact in my wife's business, when it was switched off to switch back on again, was absolutely instantaneous.
Mm.
And that's what we've seen ever since. There are some places where it doesn't work, but it's an instant impact. It's not like running a campaign. Well, it's a bit like running a campaign for e-commerce, where you're
Yeah.
looking for checkouts, but B2B it's a bit different, through the sales
Yeah.
cycle and all the rest of it. But that's the story. And we've slowly grown the business over the last decade, and we've got some great customers. We switched focus from Australia to the US back in 2017, so now most of our business is in the US. It's a good thing I'm an early riser. That's where it's actually nice to speak to an Aussie for a change. Most of my conversations are with companies in the US or Europe, but predominantly the US. And I love it. I just love the whole culture. Different, very different to Australia, but
Yeah.
I love it. I feel almost more home there chatting, with my US associates and clients and partners than Australia sometimes.
That's amazing. It's and I mean the experience your wife had with literally the tap being turned on and turned off must
Yeah,
be
yeah.
stark and said, hey, that's fascinating. If I go one step back and think about, because the statistics that I've seen says that when people go to a website, just like when they go to your LinkedIn profile, they'll only stay there for a very short period of time before they'll leave, and statistically, I think 99% don't come back after that if there's nothing there of interest.
Mm.
Was there anything that you still had to put on, or businesses still have to put on the website to capture people's attention that then becomes the catalyst for what you guys at Chatmetrics do to keep them and engage in that, I guess, conversation?
The really fascinating and probably most interesting question that could have been asked, you've just asked. And it's also the answer I give is going to absolutely shock marketers and business owners that are running websites and tweaking buttons for their conversions and making sure the messaging's right. The answer to that question is no. There's nothing that they need to do. the one thing they need to do is to get the right traffic there. As long as
Yeah.
their advertising and their marketing is driving the potential customers,
Yeah.
and not spam to their website, that's all they need to do. Um, I give an example. One of our very early clients was Victory Blinds, and
Yeah.
Victory
Okay.
Blinds, based in Melbourne there.
Yeah.
They had franchises. I think they had about 12 franchises around the country. They were getting about 15,000 visitors a month to their website, between 12 to 15,000 from memory. And they were only getting sort of 3 to 5 leads a month, 3 to 6 leads a month from their website, because the website was set up to say, call this 1-800 number
Yeah.
and, we'll book you in for free measure and quote.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, Mick Cassar, who was the owner of the business at the time, was excellent in terms of process, for sales teams and booking meetings. And his whole sales process was very, very rigorously written out. When they called, the receptionist knew exactly what to ask, exactly what to say to maximize the number of people that she booked in for appointments and so forth. And he really didn't believe that there was opportunity on his website. He thought, no, I've got everything set up so well. We're getting a lot of meetings, a lot of appointments booked through the website. So long story short, we did go live. We did it as a trial. And in the first 30 days, we delivered 125 appointments for them. And I was worried that, we put poor Mavis, the receptionist, out of a job. Um, when we caught up at the end of the month, then I said, look, this is where we're at. How many calls have you dropped? Has Mavis dropped? And he said to me, look, we've been watching this very closely over the course of the month. Maybe there's 5 or 6 that Mavis is down a little bit.
Yeah.
But that 125 we're considering as new business.
Wow.
And which effectively doubled the size of the inbound inquiries, double the amount of measure and quotes that were getting
Mm.
booked, and the
Mm.
number of at-bats that their sales team had. And so, that sort of reflective, you don't need to do anything on the website to change it, to make this effective.
Yeah.
The reason it's effective is because of the way that we do it.
Mm.
And there's a whole host of things you can do to bugger it up pretty easy. And most companies, in fact, do, because they follow what the software providers recommend, when in fact, they're recommending the wrong thing as well. But that's a whole nother conversation. Um, the result for Victory Blinds was that effectively three years later, they were able to exit and sold their business to Hunter Douglas. That was groundbreaking, doubling the the at-bats, effectively doubled the revenue, and optimized his factory throughput and all of those other benefits that come on from, increased revenues through a business. So
Mate, I hope you had some sort of equity stake in that in terms of some compensation.
no, no, no. Look, the value for me is that we're delivering value. We charge per lead. So our model is very, very simple. A decade ago, we started on a pay for performance pricing model with no lock-in contracts, and
Mm.
we've stayed that way all the way through. Our focus is on delivering value. Um, it was interesting. There've been more recent times, a couple of times where conversations have gone around that profit share side of things.
Yeah.
The risk for us there is that we can deliver the leads. I'll dig pretty deep. If you want to go that part, that's fine, but expect me to dig pretty deep and do very heavy due diligence on your sales process and how
Yeah.
well you're closing those leads.
Yeah. Yeah.
And personally, from, a risk perspective, I'd probably rather just get paid for the leads. I know they're
Mm.
quality leads and they're what you're asking for,
Mm.
as
Yeah.
opposed to then being reliant on, you being able to close those leads moving forward.
Well, it's staying in your swimming lane in your strength zone, isn't it? So that's really what it's about, and not getting too much into then, because if you then become like a sales expert, you then have to have salespeople to then do the conversions rather than just the I guess the early stages to get the qualified appointment done.
Oh, the discussions were that we still do what we do, but pass the leads over to their sales team, and we get a share of the deals that they close. And so it's like, I have no control over what you close and what you
No.
don't close. So it's like, no,
That's
no,
right.
thanks.
So this and it's when we first caught up, I was fascinated with this whole technology because I shared with you and again before we press record today. Whenever I'm interacting with an organization, whether it be a utilities company or a software company, and there's an opportunity to do a live chat, I want to actually be speaking to a person. There's nothing worse than having to get directed to a self-service or to have to talk to a bot. Um, I love the fact that you guys actually have human beings on the end of it, right? And you provide these human beings and they're fully 24 by 7 access.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about some of the challenges that you guys have faced in building the business, particularly when you've got software vendors and this, I guess, proliferation of self-service and AI and talk to a bot? What have been some of the key challenges that you've had to face, and is it still something you contend with each and every day?
Um, there's not enough hours in this podcast to be able to answer that question. Sorry. Yeah. Look, interestingly, so key challenges. There's a couple of different components to that. So one is the actual structure of the business and internal challenges, and then one is the environmental challenges. Internally, when we first kicked off, Armex, Australian steel industry, True Blue wanted to keep it all Australian. And, the problem was in recruiting for a 24/7 shift pattern. I've watched my brother who has lived, shift work for his entire life. I've
Yeah,
seen what it's done to his health. Coming from BlueScope, I've seen the studies in terms of, the health that rotating shifts have.
yeah,
And so our aim was to try and find people that we can glue to shifts rather than have them change. It's no good for your circadian rhythms.
yeah,
And we just couldn't find people in Australia to particularly the back shifts, the night
yeah,
shift. And so one of my mates said, go to the BPOs in the Philippines. That's where we find it. Well, we didn't want to go to BPOs. We wanted direct employees. So one of our philosophies was that this is our core business. We need people that we can train, develop,
yeah,
and control to an extent in terms of what they're doing, how they're interacting, and skill them up so that they can do this job properly.
yeah.
And so we started recruiting for ex-BPO employees in the Philippines. And look, highly trained, highly capable in terms of the customer support type role, where they're working to, level one support, level two support. You can say this, you can't say that, put that over
Yeah.
to a supervisor, etc. The downside for that was it was a challenge. Um, there's a level of intuition that's required in a sales conversation,
Mm.
and we don't do customer support, it's sales conversations. The flip side, the other side of it was that we had a couple of experiences where an agent didn't want to work on that day, so he'd get, or she'd get mum or auntie to sit in on the live chat, for their shift. And we'd pick it up pretty quickly because you'd see the quality of the conversations and what's going on.
Yeah.
But the reality is that was very early days for us. We nearly lost two very big customers. If we did, that probably would have been the end of us.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the struggle in trying to get good staff in the Philippines for us was something that was real. We'd used a number of different recruitment agencies. At that stage, this whole VA outsourcing thing wasn't that strong. If you wanted to do it, you really had to go through the BPOs, and that's not a model that we wanted
Mm.
to build. So I started to recruit around the world. Long story short, now we've got a team that's pretty scattered around the world. Majority are in India. They're excellent. They're double degree qualified. You can't hear accents through the keyboard, and the colloquialisms are something that we have to teach. It's part of
Yeah.
the process that we've had to build in our business. Um, that was probably the biggest internal challenge that we had, is finding the right people that can be in the right time zones, and um, then building out that whole onboard, recruitment process, onboarding process, recruitment selection, onboarding process, and then training and development, and ongoing training and development. 15% of every shift, at least, would be spent on training still.
Okay.
And that's just an ongoing requirement to make sure that their knowledge is always fresh, that they're aware of what's happening in our clients' businesses.
And
And
and with that, so just asking a question there. do you have people dedicated to, depending on the size of the client, or do you have people then be across multiple different clients, say in the same time zone, that they'll just have multiple different websites that they're responsible for?
Yeah, yeah, yes to both of those,
Okay.
depending on the size of the client.
Yeah.
One of the things that allows us to do what we do with the smaller organizations and charge just on a per lead basis is that we do load balance.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so we'll have a team where, regardless of the size of your website, you'll be allocated to a core team. Um, Everybody in the business, all of the agents and supervisors in the business will be trained on your product, but the core team will be the one that are having the chats all the time.
Hmm.
If there's a spike, if you run a campaign and there's a spike of traffic and it's got to be overflowed, then we'll load balance that out to other team members or
Yeah.
other teams. Um, and and this is why there's 15% training in every shift. If you're on that website, you wouldn't necessarily feel the difference in the conversation between the two. There
Yeah.
will be differences, but you wouldn't necessarily notice the little nuances. We do internally. And it really comes down to, a difference of like 30 seconds in response times. That's sort of the incremental differences that you
Okay.
see. The process that they've got, the frameworks that they use are all the same. It will just take them, if it's not front of mind because they're chatting for that customer all the time, they might have to go and seek the information, which will take a little bit longer. But
Yeah.
that's about the main thing internally. But that allows us to provide the service for, a customer that's getting 5 or 10 leads a month from their website. They get the same level of enterprise service that someone that's getting 400 leads a month
Yeah.
from their
Nice.
website. So
Nice. And because they pay per lead, it's like it's cost effective for them.
yeah, correct,
Nice.
correct. Yep, yep.
Awesome. So
Um,
go.
external
Yeah, I was gonna.
influences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I think there's a couple of different tranches of this. The first one is that when chatbots started to proliferate, they gave live chat a very bad name because it was a very bad experience in most cases. It was very difficult to try and find a good experience. And the majority of when you speak to people about live chat, they can all cite a bad experience they've had with a telco provider or one of the utilities providers. And so that's what sticks in their mind when, you talk about live chat. And I think you made the comment when we were talking, you hadn't really thought about live chat for lead generation. It is always been that sort of customer support in
Yeah.
in the in the back end. Um, and so fighting that reputation that it's poor has been a challenge over the years. Particularly when people have a bad experience, you start to talk about it. It's almost like the shutters go down. It's like, no, no, I don't want to give my customers that experience. The other thing that we've noticed is other organisations offering the same type of service that we do, but at a much lower level of quality. So, for
Mhm.
instance, we went live with the Builders Academy back in, well, a long time ago now. I think from memory, it was about 2017.
Okay.
And they already had a staff live chat provider in there, but they were dissatisfied with the service. And at the end of the first month, Andrew Shea, the CEO, called me and said, look, I think you've messed up with the invoicing here. You've doubled invoiced. And so I went back and checked, and it was no, we hadn't. We've actually delivered double the amount of leads as to what our predecessors were delivering. And so that we're still with those guys now. All
Mm.
that time later. So that the I guess the few companies that didn't do it very well gave it a bit of a bad rep as well. And it's outsourcing. There's some people that are just against the outsourcing, and particularly at that front end of the funnel, where you're
Yeah.
talking to their prospective customers and their prospective revenue. I mean, it's a very sensitive area. And I think that, what's probably put us in good stead is my career and the background that, I understand, I get it. That's where we've
Mm.
been. And so there's no quantity KPIs in our business. I mean, it might seem shocking to a lot of people, not one quantity KPI. They are all 100% quality based.
Yeah.
And so, our belief is that with the quality, the quantity will come,
Yeah.
and it does. So, external influences. So the other one, and now more recently with AI, it's having a really interesting influence, and it's almost like there's a rebellion happening now. I'm starting to see and hear in conversations a lot more. It's not B2C, it's not B2B, it's actually B2H. It's business to humans, and we want, we've got a high value offer. We value our clients. We want to present ourselves as bigger than we are. We want people in the live chat, not just an
Mm.
AI chatbot, that you can get from anywhere type thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's been a plus, and a lot of the smaller companies will easily just run to an AI chatbot, and AI is getting much better, I've got to say. In our experience, when we've tested it, just changing the widget shape to look like an AI chatbot, we've seen engagement go down. And I
Okay.
think that's because of the type of customers we deal with. They're um, higher value deal sizes. I think where there's a bit more importance in the deal size, the level of engagement with AI probably drops a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've noticed that in the testing that we've done. And so it's probably less inquiries from smaller organizations with low deal sizes. The ones with high deal sizes still, I mean, they sort of get it, and it's a
Mm.
much different conversation. But that's sort of been the main headwinds for us.
It's it's fascinating how far I guess the technology has evolved. And as we spoke earlier, I always used to think live chat was all about customer support
Mm.
issues. I want to talk to a person to solve my problem, whether it be a billing issue or a technical issue. But I have noticed more and more websites across various different industries having some form of live chat prompter that comes up. So as a like as a technical element, when somebody goes to a website, just say take Victory Blinds for example, when somebody is on there, is it actually a pop-up that says, oh, to grab the person's attention while they're on the website with, say, hey, Tom is ready or Terry's ready to take your call. I'm a real person with a maybe a photograph or something. Is there something that's customized around that, or does it depend really on the industry and the business that captures the attention of the person that's visited the website?
So firstly, it doesn't work everywhere. There are places. My experience is anything to do with cyber security or the cyber space. People just don't want to click on anything. They don't want to click on live chat. They don't want to click on
Yeah.
chatbots. We've got a couple of customers in that area, in that vertical, and we're working with them constantly to try and increase the level of engagement. And it's very difficult because I think there's just this whole level of, by the time they're there, they're acutely aware of all of the risks, and they don't want to click on anything that they're not 100% sure about. I think that's part of it. But even whether it's I'm talking, we've got experience across insurance, across cybersecurity products themselves, and security equipment, hardware, and it's the same across all. So we haven't been able to crack the magic yet, but we'll. I'm fairly tenacious, so we'll keep at it, and I'm sure we'll find something that will work in time. Um, but yes, it is proactive, and that's one of the things that um, set. So there's 12 very specific aspects of live chat that you need to have in place to make sure that it's optimized. And if you drop any one of those, you'll be missing leads. And
Okay.
the first one is that it has to be proactive.
Yeah.
And we've found over, we've had 2.5, heading towards 3 million conversations now. Um, $5 billion worth of pipeline we've delivered for our clients. So, we're having 100,000 plus chats a month.
Wow.
Um, now. So I guess I say that just really to offer some credibility to the statistics that I quote. We've actually have seen, what goes on. The best timing, as far as a pop-up concern, is 10 seconds.
Mm.
9 to 10 seconds on a website. At that time, people are coming to the site. If you look at your bounce rate, you spoke earlier about the people that come to a site and then they disappear and don't come back. If you look at your bounce rate, it'll tell you, at what point people are leaving. And
Yeah.
ideally, you want to make sure the live chat is well and truly popping up before they're
That's
at that
it.
exit point for sure. But we found that, with a website that's got the right traffic on it, 10 seconds, a greeting simply like somebody walking into a bricks and mortar shop that says, hey, we're here to help you if you need us. We're not
Yeah.
going to annoy the hell out of you, but
Yeah.
we're here if you've got any questions. we've found that in 2019, the number of people that were going to our customers' websites and engaging with the chat before that 10-second pop-up was 7%.
7.
7%. Now that number is closer to 30%.
Wow.
It's about 28.9% or something at the moment. I haven't checked
Okay.
it for a couple of months. And so we're seeing this shift of um, there was a small core of people that would be just come to a website. It's almost, you could see the personality type. They just want to get in and get an answer and get out again type thing. Now it's almost like, we've got this whole, everybody talks like this these days. Them use
Yep.
messaging services, whether it's WhatsApp or Snapchat or Messenger or, emails on your phone, the digital phone. I think we're
Yep.
seeing the impact of that, people coming to a website, particularly with so many mobile devices being used these days that, um, they're used to messaging. They're used to
Mm.
a messaging type communication. And so that's what live chat gives. And if you're a bit time poor, or you've been researching across a couple of different websites, and you really just want some answers instead of having to scroll through every
Mm.
page, or try and search out what, or seek out what you're looking for, jumping in and having a conversation with the live chat's a good way to do it. So, I mean, look, what a lot of people don't realize as well these days is, we, and I say us as collectively, the sales and marketing people in this human race that we're in, have forced buyers to want to remain anonymous as long as possible. And so, you think about the old challenger sales. I remember when I was going through the challenger sales training back in the Bluescope days, and 53% of the buyer's journey is complete before the sales rep even gets to start to
Yeah.
influence the outcome. Well, I saw about 4 or 5 weeks ago now a report from Gartner that is now saying that in B2B sales, 80% of that buyer's journey is complete before they put their hand up.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, how does a salesperson these days, becomes more of a concierge,
Yeah.
to the end state, as opposed to influencing their decision. So where does all of that research happen? Well, it happens in WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and peer organizations and
Mm.
peer communities, but it also happens on your website. When
Yep.
somebody's in investigating your product or offering, the first place they go generally in a B2B environment is they'll check your LinkedIn, they'll check your website, and then they'll start to, because most people want to come from a point of, when they're researching or asking their peers and friends and associates about a
Yeah.
particular product, they want to have some basic knowledge. And so
Correct.
they'll check your website out. And so, if you don't have live chat, you're missing out on that opportunity to actually be part of the research right back at the very beginning. So
Yeah.
that's what one of the huge benefits that live chat does is, forget the 80% complete, you get to be one of the first, very early stages in helping influence their buying decision.
So I love that proactivity and within 10 seconds. So
Mm.
you mentioned there was 12 things. We probably won't go through all 12 because we want people to check out what you guys do. What are some of the other key, I guess, key initiatives or key elements that organizations have to consider out of those 12?
Look, I should preface this by saying our experiences with organizations that have product market fit, they have their ICP, their ideal client profile, coming to their website,
Yeah.
and they are already generating leads through their website. We're not magicians. We can't help, if you've got terrible traffic, we can't increase the amount of traffic you got, except to say that having live chat on a website reduces your bounce rate fairly dramatically.
Mm.
One client saw it went from 70% to 40% in the course of 30 days because
Okay.
people started to engage with the live chat. Um, so I'll preface it to say, and our client base where we operate is generally higher value deals,
Mm.
sort of $25,000 plus deal size, or, average lifetime up into the 5, 6 figure deal sizes for
Yep.
software and beyond. So when I talk about what I'm the 12 components or the most important things, that's the sort of environment that we're operating in.
Yep.
And 10-second pop-up time's the first one. The second one is making it very obvious that there's a human being that they're going to be talking to. That's the second one we found. I mean, every time we test it, we test it quite well. Look, I would say probably every 18 months to 2 years, we'll run a concerted test to test what happens if we make this look like a chatbot, and what happens if we make it look like AI. every single time we watch engagement levels drop. And you might think, oh, okay, so there's less people chatting. They're probably
Yeah.
the people that really want to buy will still chat. Well, that's not what happens. There's
Okay.
less people chatting, and we find that the correlation of the number of leads we generate drops in relationship with the less people that are
Wow.
chatting. So it's we haven't seen it turn. I expect at some point it will turn. But the reports that I've seen, there was one that was done recently by one of the big four consulting firms. I can't remember which one it was, that said that the number of people that don't trust AI chatbots is 87%. Like 87% of people that are visiting websites don't trust AI chatbots,
Yeah.
but they'll still engage if they've got a real question that they're trying, if they've got a real problem they're trying to solve, they'll still engage.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think it probably a little bit different to that when it comes to higher value deal
Yeah.
size or bigger problems that they're trying to solve. Actually, I think that trust factor has a lot more to more to impact the engagement. So that's the first two.
So
Look,
just on that one though, as a it might sound like an ignorant question, but as a human, right? How do I prove? So if I'm sitting behind one of your organizations, one of your customers, how do I prove that I'm a human being?
you
Yeah.
be human. You just be human. I mean, look, you people ask now, and it's that's another stat that's really interesting. When we first kicked off, nobody was asking, "Are you a chatbot?" So
Okay.
in a decade ago, nobody was asking that question. In around about 2019, 2020, there was around 10 to 15% of people seeking clarification. These days, it's as high as 33%, nearly a third. And I think there's another 7% that just assume that they're talking to either a chatbot or AI.
Yeah.
And we say that because we watch the tone of conversation change when they realize they're talking to a person. It goes from staccato, one word demands and answers to when they realize there's a person on the other, all of a sudden it becomes a flowing, conversation as opposed to, demands and commands. So, how do you do it? If somebody asks, then we just answer honestly. And we
Yeah.
put a bit of humor in it. We say, well, no, luckily you're not. I'm a real person. But would you like me to hand you over to the bot? Like that. We handle it sort of like that. So we can if we want. We'll push you over and you can have a chat with Billy the bot. But yeah, so we sort of handle it like that. Some people don't believe, and in those instances, say, look, we don't want to waste your time. If you don't have any real questions, then we'll just close the chat.
Yeah.
And bots generally don't do that
Yeah.
either. So our people are trained to do that. So that's generally how you do it. And look, obviously, the first greeting is that it's a person. You're not representing it, like it's not a bot in any way, shape, or form. And we have a person's picture in there, so
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
do much
Cool.
more than that. Yeah, just manage
Yeah.
it through the conversation.
Nice. I like that. Just be human. Just be
That's what
human
they
as if
say.
you're meeting somebody face to face, because it's
That's
literally
right.
they're coming into your shop front, aren't they? So coming into your premises and treat them like a human being.
Well, so this leads us into it's a nice segue into point number three, and that is give before you ask. And that law of reciprocity, the human aspect around curiosity
Mm,
is really cannot be undervalued. And this is where so many companies get it wrong, whether they've got a chatbot on the front end or whether it's even a form to fill in before they'll let you get through to speaking with a person. They'll ask for your contact details. We ask for a name, of course. That's how,
yeah.
anybody that introduces anybody when you're having a conversation
Yeah,
human to
absolutely.
human, we'll get out to know our names.
Mm,
But it's like, I use I always say it's a bit like asking for a kiss on a first date before you've even bought her a drink. I mean, that's when you ask for somebody's email address. That's what that in my mind is a bit like. It's just so ridiculous, and yet it's become common practice. It's become
yeah,
supposedly touted by the software companies that sell chatbots as best practice. Well,
that's it.
it's so far away from best practice, it's not funny. We had one client that we're actually sitting in their software, and they had a chatbot on the front end. And the chatbot said, did you want to speak with support or did you want to speak with sales? And if you clicked, you want to speak with sales, the next thing it says is, hey, please give us your email address just in case we get disconnected. And I'm like, well, In this day and age, who wants to deal with a SaaS company that might get disconnected? Like, really, that in itself is ridiculous. But the gate effectively by asking for an email address before it let you speak with us, who it was our team that was sitting in the
Yeah, yeah,
live chat at that point in time. 15,000 visitors a month. These guys were getting I think it was 2 leads the first month, 3 leads the second month, which was ridiculously low for the traffic they had. And I spoke to the CMO and said, look, you've got an issue. Either the chatbot's filtering everyone out, or you've got rubbish traffic. Now, I know you're
yeah,
spending a lot of money on your SEO and advertising. So, which one's it likely to be? Can you please go and check the drop-off rate when you ask
yeah.
for an email address? 96% of people that said, I want to talk to sales, dropped out when they were asked for an email address. 96%.
That is insane.
And so there was actually a similar, I think it was about a 21 times increase in lead gen. We were up to 60, just over 60 leads in the first month with those guys. It was, and that's a similar sort of increase to conversion rate we had with Victory Blinds. I think, it was a 2,100% increase with Victory Blinds as well. So 21x
Mm.
is about where it ended up. And so those two examples, but asking upfront for something before you've even given anything, you've got to remember when these people are researching, another word for researching is qualification.
Yeah.
They're qualifying whether or not you are going to be able to solve their problem. And
Mm.
so, this whole idea of chatbots qualifying out the tire kickers will ask for their email address and get rid of them. You're qualifying away real qualified buyers.
Yeah.
They might not be qualified by you yet, but if you got them through the right process, they would be
Totally.
buying from you. And so, it's one of the worst things that any website can do. And people just don't believe it, or, don't have the resources to test it without it. I look at every time you go to a website and they ask for an email, just go, bingo, mate, these guys are
Yeah.
losing at least half probably of the leads they could be, at least half of the
Yeah.
leads they could be getting. So, um, but that's don't ask up front. Answer first. They'll always have a question. The reason people go to live chat is because they've got a question. But why wouldn't you
Yeah.
just do that? The most easy thing you can do with a prospective customer is to give them something.
Totally.
And giving them an answer to their first question is a great way to start. Um, the next thing is so item number 4 really is the speed of response.
Yeah. Okay.
We live in this world of immediacy. I think I saw a funny meme the other day where somebody was waiting for a burger, had to get sent to a waiting line to wait for a burger for 2 minutes in McDonald's, and was blowing up at the window saying 2 minutes, I've got to wait 2 minutes for a hamburger. It's like,
Yeah.
man, I'll make a hamburger in 25 minutes for you. It'll be a bit better than that one, but if you want speed, you're going to get that. So like this expectation of immediacy everywhere means that we've become impatient,
Yeah.
and the longer it takes to respond has a huge impact. So we always say, and I've got a lead magnet, a book that I've written called the I think it's 60-second, speed to lead blueprint. How to set your business up to actually respond within 60 seconds. And 60 seconds seems to be, there's a big drop off after 60
Mm.
seconds. If you make somebody wait more than 1 minute,
Yeah.
you'll find they get distracted. They'll jump to another website, usually one of your competitors. Our SLA, our promise is that we will respond within 60 seconds. Our current level of response time is 28 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a difference between 60 seconds and 30 seconds, believe it or not. Those little increments they do actually have a material impact. People talk about, I respond in 5 minutes or respond in an hour, we get back to you within a day. Can you imagine researching for a particular problem that you're trying to solve and you're trying to find some software that's going to do it for you? You go to 3 different websites. On one website, it says, fill in a form and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
You go to another website, there's a chatbot there, and it says, give us your email address and I'll put you through to somebody. So you get in your email address, it says, oh, sorry, there's no one here, but we'll be back to you first thing in the morning. Then you get a
Hmm.
follow-up email that says, oh, thanks for chatting with us, we'll be back in touch. Then you go to a third website, you click on the live chat, there's someone there, they start to answer your questions. and gets through to a stage where, as it does with most conversations, for real prospects, that um, they've had their questions answered. They've answered questions anonymously in the live chat as well.
Mm,
It's still anonymous at this stage, so they'll share a lot more information.
yeah.
And then there's the offer to book in for a meeting
Mm,
tomorrow with one of our reps or our specialists or with
yeah.
one of our team. Yep, no worries. Thanks for that. What chance have the other two businesses got of engaging with that person? Now, one, it's always hard to get follow up with forms and
Yeah.
from email inquiries. You're going to see a drop off. Two, they've in their mind they've already sort of semi got it locked in. They've had all their questions answered. They're now taking that conversation to the next level. So
Mm,
even if they did get through and they did answer the phone, it's like, oh look, no, sorry, it's okay. I've already got a meeting booked tomorrow. Let me get through that first, and I'll see if I've still got any questions or
yeah.
unmet, unresolved
Yeah.
concerns beyond that.
Totally.
This is the benefit it has in terms of building pipeline and picking up market share against your customers. So
Because and as you were talking, Terry, I'm thinking it's like all the marketing people I talk with and liaise with, they're always saying it's the person or the organization that can respond really quickly, not necessarily almost instantaneous, but quickly, that is ahead of their competition. And there's almost like this law of, I'm not sure what it's called, the law of diminishing returns, but it's almost like a atrophy from a marketing point of view. If you leave it a day, then there's a huge percentage of drop off you'll never get back, and the level of interest starts to go. So to have that in the moment type of interaction, and particularly if you're giving something first, not asking for information first, almost like there's a gate you have to go through, it actually puts people's, I guess, barriers not as up, right? So they're more open then to share, particularly if it's anonymous. And if there is a fit, like there's a qualification there, they're probably more likely and willing to want to share whatever information you're now going to ask them to provide because you've actually earned the right to ask those questions because you've given.
absolutely, 100% correct. And this brings me to, this conversation around speed to lead brings me back to that conversation I had with Elza Malik about what the CEI trained to.
Yeah.
I never realized the psychology behind speed to lead. We all think that it's because people want to get responded to quickly. Well, it's
Mm,
not. It's in fact, it's much deeper than that. When you are the first person to respond and you're providing answers to their questions and insights and helping them think about, things they should consider when they're actually trying to solve this problem,
yeah.
you have effectively become like the old challenger sales. You're the first person there that actually helps them start to, in their mind, build out, the RFP process.
Mm,
What's happening from a psychological perspective, though, is when they speak to a competitor or they speak to somebody else about this, if the competitor says the same thing that you do, that's not a feather in the competitor's bow. What it actually is social proof of what you said. And it's
mm,
reconfirming in their mind, oh, that's right. That's what Terry said. That's
mm,
right. It's confirmed by these people. So he was being honest with me. What
yeah.
it does, it builds your trust up. It
Mm,
doesn't build anything up for the competitor. It's fascinating the way the psychology actually works with it, to the extent that I watched the docu, and this is how this whole conversation came about with Elsa. I watched a documentary on the Trump and Harris election process and campaigns. And in this in particular, there was the Trump team sitting there watching a speech that she was giving and in real time tweeting. She just said this, what it really means is this, etc. So they were sort of framing and twisting the message to be theirs,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
they were actually doing it live. She finished the sentence, and before she's finished the next sentence, the team have tweeted something out, framing the conversation. That's when Elsa said, the CIA trained for this. The reason they train for this is the person that gets to set the commentary to start with, that gives the information or that first conversation, the two-way conversation,
Mm,
is what everything else is then becomes social proof of.
mm.
And conversely, when a competitor says something different, then the doubt is cast against the competitor, not against the
Not
first
you.
person. That's
Yeah.
right. It's fascinating, really. And so this whole speed to lead, sure, speed is a factor and the fact that there's a level of impatience, but it's a deeper psychological impact that the reason you want to be fast is because you want to be first.
Yeah.
And it's the one that the responds first. So the percentages, I mean, the stat that gets touted all the time, I can't even remember where it came from, but you know, over 51% of deals, of winnable deals, goes to the company that responds first.
Mm.
That it's there's been so much research done on it. It's not funny. I can't even remember where I've seen three or four of them now. But I always thought it was because you get back fast, so it's a good experience. It's not. It's that psychological impact that you get this.
Yeah.
Everything else becomes social proof against what you say.
Yeah. And then if you add the factor on top, which you've been talking about throughout this conversation around quality over the quantity, if there's a quality, you've now got the benchmark. So you become almost like at least in the customers, the prospective customers' mind, the expert of which everyone else is being compared to.
Correct. Correct.
So it's and
You
then
know,
ability.
the we talk about anonymous conversations or private conversations. You mentioned that people feel safe and they'll share information. You would be shocked at the level of questioning and qualification and discovery type call you can get into when you're speaking to somebody on the other side, that feels they're completely anonymous. They haven't
Yep.
handed any information over, beyond the standard, how big's your company, how many employees are they, is it global, is it local,
Mm.
do you have budget for this, you start to get into questions about, you know, is this a now problem or a later problem for your business? What's the timing
Yeah.
you want to resolve it? Now, what happens from an organizational perspective? What's the impact if this isn't resolved? They'll start to talk about cash flow projections and
Mm.
impact with investors. And then you can ask the question, well, what does it mean for you in your role if this isn't solved? And it's like, oh, I don't know. I'm worried if I haven't got a job. So this might be conversation number 2 or 3. We have another 3 conversations and then finally book a meeting with them.
Yeah.
The sales rep, when they're going into that meeting, has that entire conversation history to refer back on.
Yeah.
What gold is that for them? So,
Oh,
the anonymous conversation component is another huge, part of the 12. Yeah.
no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So, I'm also conscious of time. So, to bring this in to a land. So, hey, I've loved this, and you've educated me again, even after the first time we caught up a few weeks ago. Um, how do you see the future? I mean, you mentioned before that you're not quite sure about AI is always improving. You're not quite sure how it's going to evolve, but I guess as a business owner now working across the world, and you mentioned before you've got a large percentage of your customers based in the US. Do you look at the future with a sense of excitement and anticipation on how the whole thing's going to evolve, or are there some question marks potentially that might exist? How are you looking at it?
Look, if you ask me where am I on the scale of, hype versus disaster with, what's coming, I mean, I'm in the middle. I'm in the
Okay.
middle. I'm not hyped to one end, and I'm not thinking that it's going to be a disaster, but it's going to depend on a couple of things. There's definitely bad actors already
Mm,
taking advantages of AI from a globe, like from a community, a human community perspective.
yeah.
In the business world, there's places that chatbots did work really well and still do work really well. Low value e-commerce sales where, you're selling t-shirts or, $10, $20 t-shirts. And the question is, do you have this color? Well, that's easy
Yeah.
integration for a chatbot to answer. At the other end, you know, put a Cisco router manual into a chatbot and let, an engineer chat keywords to it all day long if it needs it, if the engineer needs advice on
Yeah.
anything. So very technical type stuff, they work well. I think there's always going to be this human element or human aspect in the middle where, particularly where there's higher value and emotional decisions, or emotions and reputation. I think where those
Mm,
3 things are involved, there'll be, a human element. What that looks like, AI is definitely getting better and better. And, I think AI, the place I'd be worried about AI more than anything else is customer support to start with.
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There's some brilliant AI customer support tools now, that are in place. There's still a lot of effort required, to get them right,
Mm,
but you can get them right. I've seen them in operation. They're brilliant. They do take ongoing management as well. They're not necessarily self-managing. Yeah, it's quite a complicated setup to build,
mm,
an AI customer support chatbot, which is then self teaching and self
yeah.
improving. From a lead generation perspective and what we do, I think there'll always be a requirement for a person-to-person conversation. AI in general, we're building an AI chatbot tool right now. I mean, it'll be launched probably before this is launched. It'll be out there, and I'll be saying, hey, come to the Chatmetrics website and sign up. but we've got a human in the loop aspect to it, and
Okay.
we've got a decade of experience in, nearly 3 million chats and $5 billion in pipeline that we've built into this thing. We're not a couple of tech bros that have, grabbed Chat GPT and put a skin across the top of it and say, here's your AI, chatbot. We've got a lot of uh, let's say, attributes and insights that we've garnered over the last decade to have in there. But look, generally, I think things will progress further and further towards AI where they can. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. But there's also the perception, I think, perception factor as well. When somebody comes to a website, if there's a person sitting there versus an AI sitting there versus a chatbot sitting there, even if you had all three, and you can have all three, it's worthwhile A/B testing,
Mm.
and your customers will answer that question for you.
Yeah. And I think my own personal view is I think AI will continue to obviously evolve, but at its core, we're a human species, and human species are designed to connect. So unless an AI can completely replicate human connection, it's probably going to be an augmentation to what we already do, not a replacement of what we do. So that's what I like to think anyway.
Yeah, look, I agree. I agree. I think that, if you want to get really deep with it, when AI gets smarter than humans, that's a different story because we've
Yeah.
never had to deal with that before.
Yeah.
But I believe that we are a little way away from that just yet. I have
Yeah.
a bit more faith that,
Yeah.
it's going to be a little bit harder to get smarter than us on so many different ways. So,
Let us hope. Let us hope. Terry, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For people listening to this who would like to connect with you, learn more about yourself, but also get involved with chat metrics and learning about how they can make some inquiries about how chat metrics can help them in their business. Where's the best place for them to
uh,
go?
chatmetrics.com. That's the easy place to go if you want to connect with me directly. And look, you can go to chatmetrics.com and chat with the team. We'll respond
Yeah,
within 30 seconds.
literally. And they're real
um,
people, although you did say there's going to be some chatbots coming on soon.
Not on Chatmetrics, there won't be. We'll have a product that we'll offer, but we won't,
You won't do it.
personally,
It's always
yeah, we
people.
won't. It'll always be people on our side
Beautiful.
for sure. And if they want to contact me directly or get in touch directly, LinkedIn, yeah, Terry Wilson TJ. That's my LinkedIn profile. So.
Brilliant. And I'll also, in the show notes, when I add those, I'll also add your podcast URL as well, so they can
Oh,
check
that'd
out
be
your
great.
podcast to chat. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
um, mate, been an absolute pleasure. It's you've educated me, so that's something I always love talking to people with similar backgrounds, but also different elements to it. So, thank you for such an enlightening conversation, and thanks for being a guest
No,
on the
it's been my
Exceptional Sales Leader
pleasure.
podcast.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Darren. I appreciate it. And if anyone wants to see the full 12 step framework, I'm happy to share it. Just DM me and I'll send it your way.
Brilliant. Love your work, mate. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Darren. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.